This is the time that we welcome Bill Evans, Dr. William Evans, to be our Storytime teller today.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to get this. I'm going to sit down. You know, scripture does say that Jesus, after he had read the scriptures in the tabernacle, he sat down to teach. So I'm just reviving an old custom. Anyway, I want to start today by asking a question. Primdaya, what is your favorite food?
Well, I don't know if it's true or not, but the first thing that popped into my mind was macaroni and cheese.
Macaroni and cheese. All right. You know, that's a favorite food of a lot of people. It really is, especially kids, I think. And you know, it's good. Would you eat it for breakfast
Yes,
and lunch and supper
every day.
every day? Oh, okay. You wouldn't get tired of it, right? Oh, you would get tired of it. You know, we all have something like that we love to, like food. Just for me, it's chocolate. You know, but I wouldn't eat it every day, every meal. I'd get tired of it. Well, you know, in the past several months, you've had a lot of speakers that have been up here in front. Glenn, Eva, you know, well, I did a whole lot of people. And they have really just poured out their hearts, and they have given messages that are truly, truly inspirational, and they really have a lot of meat to it. But you know something? It's time for a change. Today is a fun day. Yeah, you deserve it. You're right. Because we're going to do something a little different. I'm not going to. Usually, when I'm up here talking, I give you all kinds of science and deep things that you sit there and it goes, you know, right over your head. I'm sure, but that's okay, because today we're going to be a little bit different. We're going to tell stories, and I've got a little story I want to tell you. First of all, before we start. And this is a true story. It was in the church, and there was a man that he was an elder in the church. He was always there at the church. Every time the door opened, he would be there. And they had midweek services on Wednesday, you know, so he was there every Wednesday, all just faithful as he could be. And then one Wednesday, he didn't show up. And the preacher got kind of, wonder what's wrong with him. So the next day he went to visit him and to see if anything was wrong with him. And he says, "Are you okay?" And the man says, "Oh, I'm just fine, preacher." He says, "Well, I missed you last night." He says, and the man kind of looked down at the ground, looked back up, and he said, "Well, you know, preacher, every once in a while, you just got to stay home and cut your toenails." Always something that has to be a little bit different. And what we're going to do today, I'm going to tell you a story about my mom, several stories about my mom, just so you get an idea of the being Mother's Day. We like to honor our moms and think about them and think about their love and the concern. And I'll just tell you a little bit about my mom. She was born in Nome, Alaska, believe it or not. And she and her brother, her older brother, were up there in Alaska. And one day they decided to kind of explore, and they went walking out of town, out of Nome, and they got a couple of hills away, and they came face to face with several wolves. And just at that time, my grandmother, their mother, found them, and she says, "Do not run. Back away slowly and follow me home." And they walked slowly back home. Now, my mom grew up mainly in Oakland, California. And they were a well-to-do family. In fact, my grandfather, he was up in Alaska. That's why they were in Alaska. But he was up there because he had a gold mining. They mined the gold. And just to let you know that what happened was while he was back in Oakland one time, his partner gambled away the gold mine. So his other partner said, "Well, we don't have a gold mine. You want to go back with me to North Carolina and help me in my business?" And my grandfather said, "No, you aren't going to make any money, selling that weed called tobacco." This was Dukes of Reynolds Tobacco. And if you have any age on you, you know that family was the wealthiest family in the United States at that time. See, I came close to wealth. That's what my grandfather would say. He was close to it. But anyway, my mom, when she was 12 years old, she went to Europe on a boat by herself. We would never do that with a 12-year-old today, would we? No. But my mom did that. And she went to see her cousins because her father, my grandfather, was Czechoslovakian. So she went to see them and was just given royal treatment there in Czechoslovakia. And so they had money. And she came back here, and then she was born in 1912. So 17 years old is 1929. You know what happened in 1929? She was so close to wealth. But anyway, they lost all the money. And my grandfather, I don't know how much later than that, he passed away. He had some kind of cancer, I believe. But I never got to meet him. So my mother ended up going back to Kentucky. Her mother, my grandmother, moved back to Kentucky where she was from. And mother got a job working in a bank. She was a teller in a bank. And it was there that she met my dad, who had graduated from college in 1929. It's about as bad as they are now. And he was a county agent, and he went up there and lived up there for several years, enough time to, get my mom to marry him. So they got married, and then I guess they tried to make it up there for a little bit, but then it just couldn't with the Depression. So they came back to, came back to central Kentucky and lived with his parents. And my mother and my dad had a room in the house that my parents, his grandparent, my grandparents owned, his dad owned. And it was kind of, well, I'll just say, my mother was a newlywed. She was in her 20s. She was newlywed, coming back to live in a house in central Kentucky, and they're only given a room in the house. And that room, they had another couple that lived there in the house too. Their room was just beyond my mother and dad's room, and they had to go through my mother and dad's room in order to get to their room. You can imagine what a newlywed would how they would feel about that. Soon, Dad got another house, but Mom was she was of the, I would say, the Southern aristocracy. And I say that with all good meaning to it, everything good about it, because she was She had poise. She was very gentle in a way. She was a type of person that you really, everyone liked. And she had that she knew manners and how to teach them and everything like that. Until I guess that anyway, she was just really a gentle Southern woman. She was also a mother. And I have two sisters, both older than me. I was the only boy and I was the baby. Was I spoiled? No. Mom was the disciplinarian in our house. She got a lot of practice on me. We had a forsythia bush right outside the house, and she would send me out there to cut a switch so she could switch me. And she broke a yardstick on me one time. I was a perfect little kid. Anyway, she was teaching me manners. But that was back when corporal punishment was not so bad. It wasn't so bad then. And but Mom was really good. When she passed away, she had Alzheimer's, and when she passed away, we didn't have a funeral per se. We just did the graveside ceremony, and I spoke, which is kind of different, I guess, having the child do the parents' funeral. And I had a topic, and I thought, Mom, okay, M-O-M. The only thing I could think of was mean old mom. And so that's what I talked about, mean old mom. And I talked about all the times when she disciplined me and she didn't let me do things that I wanted to do and so on. But of course, the whole reason was she was really good because they made me grow up the way I have and to be the person that I am. Mom was like that. She was a good person. And she could cook. Oh boy, could she cook. She could cook everything. And I took, once I became a minister, I took a youth group from Western Kentucky. We went up to Cincinnati area and we stopped at my hometown. And they spent the night in the church basement because it was available and it was free. And my mom said, well, come on over, we'll have just a little bit to eat. So they, had what, 12 or 13 kids anyway, and a couple of sponsors. And so they went up to my mom's house, and we had a dining room in the house, and she had a great big long table, and she had just filled that table with food. And the sponsors, they just said, oh, they talked about that for years, just a little bit of food, that was enough to feed an army. And we had an army of kids there. So that's the type of person that she was. That's a little bit about my mom. A little bit about me that maybe I shouldn't have shared too much anyway. So why don't we share some stories about your mom? Want to get the microphone and anyone want to talk a story about your mom? What your mom was like? Who wants to go first? Okay.
So the disciplining. My mom learned really early at 4. She'd go to her dad to say, what can I do? Can I do this? He said, I don't know, go ask mom. She'd go to her mom and ask her, what can I do this? She said, I don't know, go ask your dad. So at 4, she decided she could just do whatever she damn well wants to do because nobody's giving her an answer. But as she grew up, she took it a little to the extreme that she didn't want us to be like that. So she was very strict. Like, did I tell you to breathe? Now sit still and hold your breath. And to this day, I still hold my breath. I have to remind myself I don't have to hold my breath. And when she got older, she had Alzheimer's. sitting in the facility where we ended up, I had her 8 years in my home and then we finally put her over there. And I went in one day, I said, Mom, why are you sitting by yourself? Well, so I went over and asked the staff and she says, did she do this to y'all when y'all were little? She scares everybody she sits with. She says, I'm watching you. And I went, oh my God. Yes. Okay, Mom, how's that serving you? It's serving me fine. I said, okay. So, but yes, she was very strict, overly strict. So the mothering I got was from her sister, her middle, there was 3 girls and 1 boy in her family. And I have 1 boy and 3 girls in my, 1 girl and 3 sons in my family, but it's kind of, anyway, I just lost my train of thought here for a second. What was it? Oh, my Aunt Rosie would say, come over to my house for the day, and I will let you say whatever you want to say, complain all day, gripe all day, get it all out of your system, because my mother would not let us do that. So there's where I got my mothering. And then I had a great aunt, great aunt, Aunt Merle, who would love us unconditionally. The only time I remember, she loved all the people unconditionally. And she had police officers back in those days bring kids to her house.
Mhm.
This is another bad kid. And she'd say, no, there's no such thing as a bad kid. Bad parenting maybe, but not a bad kid. And she actually saved over 300 kids in her
Wow.
lifetime. And she was the most wonderfully delightful 300-pound lady that I just adored and loved and couldn't not get enough of her. And would curl up in her lap after I got married to cry, why did I get married? But anyway, there's been that kind of influence in strong women, but each one mothering in a different way.
Who else wants to share?
In the reading today, the 3rd paragraph, it says, no matter how mother's love comes into my life, no matter how it comes into my life, I recognize and give thanks for its divine source. So I never knew my mother. I'm one of those products of society where the mother isn't part of your life as you grow up. Of course, I had a mother, and I knew my mother, yes, from the age of 0 to the age of 6. And then my mother and father separated or got divorced. I was raised by my father. But I have many mothers in my life. And one of them was my aunt, where I lived with them, my aunt's family, for a year. And that was the first time I really remember. I was in the 3rd grade. And no, 5th grade, I'm sorry. And I remember sitting next to her, just feeling, that was the first time I really remember in my heart a mother feel. Because my dad was a military guy, and we just traveled around. I don't know how he did it. I have no idea. So he really was a mother too. He took care of us, right? Me and my 2 brothers. And but the real feminine mother I remember was the first time was my aunt. The second mother was when my dad went to Vietnam in 1968. He left us, and I was then in the 6th grade, I think. He left us with a family in Alabama, and that's where he was stationed at the time, in Montgomery. And they had 3 boys, and it was myself and my 2 brothers, so there were 6 boys in this small brick, 3-bedroom, little bitty bedroom house in Montgomery. And her name was Sarah Johnson. And I remember her as my mother, mostly, and that was for like a year and a half. I lived in a family with a mother, and where I had chores and we got spanked, and it was just like the whip, the stick, that's how they were. And we went to church every Sunday. They had what they called singings on the weekend. On Sundays, they'd have all this food on the table. So I've had a lot of different mothers. And that's why when I read this here, it said, no matter how mother's love comes into my life, I recognize and give thanks for its divine source. So my mother was my father. Father was my mother. My real aunt was my mother. a lady that my dad met that thought we would be okay with for a year and a half was my mother. Claire is my mother right here now. So, you know, mothers are everywhere and they're so important. And last thing to say, one thing that I heard, which I truly believe this. If it wasn't for grandmothers, the world would fall apart, right?
Yeah.
Grandmothers. Yeah.
Anybody else? I'm back here to you.
I can remember walking home from school and opening the door and smelling fresh bread and homemade jam and cookies too. My mother was very loving, very protective, and she spoiled me.
Hit the switch on it again. Turn it on off.
She was very caring. She wanted me to do, she said, the world is your oyster. Go out and explore. And she's very good about, because we lived in a very small town. She said, go. This is just one place. There's so much more out there, and find it. And for that, I am really grateful. And yeah, she was just wonderful. And I miss her every day. She died prematurely of liver cancer 30 years ago. So it was, but I'm still kind of angry that she left me that way, but we still talk. And I still, when she's going through chemo, I happened to be living in Olympia at one time, and she stayed with me. And after she left, there was a tuft of her hair that had fallen out that had started to regrow. And that tuft is very soft, and I still have it today. And
Great. Anybody else? Back?
Is it on? Oh my goodness, my mother was like the general. She was so hard on us and on herself mostly. There were 4 kids, you know, and she was responsible for all of us and her mother. You know, kind of a single parent situation. But I want to pay a tribute to Suzanne because she was not loving, and I don't, you know, have warm feelings for her, but she was an amazing woman, way ahead of her time. She lied about her age at 17, ran away from Massachusetts, joined the Navy. And that's where she met my father, who said he was a rancher in Texas, but that was not true. But anyway, she ended up in Texas, and you know, she was with she was the administrator of her own schools. She developed like 6 preschools and kindergartens. She had a synchronized swimming group we were all a part of. I was always you know, working or doing something for that. Yeah, she was just an amazing woman. She was an artist. She went back to TCU at 55 and got a master's, which she'd always wanted to do. And, you know, she was just something else. You didn't cross her. She was very intimidating. I'm a high sensitive, and we didn't see eye to eye because, you know, she just wanted to toughen me up, I think. But I am grateful for, you know, who I am today, and that is because of my mother and, you know, pretty much our solo caregiver. She was really believed in education and kind of guided me into the teaching field. And so I did that. I was pretty successful. So, you know, she had so many good qualities, but she wasn't a loving mother. And I've come to terms with that, accepted that. But, you know, thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Mom.
My mom's name is Rose, and she was born in Manhattan in 1915. which was shortly after her parents arrived here from Italy. And she was just the sweetest lady in the world. And a little Italian lady, and she could not cook. Just couldn't cook. She burnt everything. But she was loving and sweet as the day is long. And loved to go to church. And my dad was Jewish. When she first got married, my grandma was, so they tell me, wasn't happy about that. And but she got to know him, and he was a great guy, and she loved him, and everything worked out really well. I felt bad for him that she couldn't cook, that he had to come home, and but she was the sweetest lady in the world, and just loved to go to church. And the kids on the block, all the religious kids, it was a very Catholic neighborhood. Irish people on one side of the block and Italians on the other side. Everybody got along pretty much. It was a rough neighborhood. And I remember my father saying to me, don't believe this religion thing, he'd say to me. He says, it's not your mother that's wrong, it's all of them. So I said, all right, Pop. And I listened to him because the kids on the block would tell me about the violence in the Catholic school perpetrated upon them by the nuns. I mean, they were serious people. So I was just grateful that he said to me, you don't have to go to religious instructions, because I was in a public school. And as I grew up, and these kids, all these religious kids on the block would always be at my house, and my mother would give them a bowl of macaroni. She couldn't cook anything else, but it was, just sweet to see all these kids in my house, not visiting me. They were just there to see my mother. She was just the sweetest lady, and everyone on the block just loved her and told me how lucky I was. I just thought she was a nag. She was a doll. And she lived a long life, and I'm so grateful for her. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk about her.
Thank you. Eva.
Well, it'll be my mother's 101 birthday tomorrow. Even though she's not here, she's still with me. And I really credit all of who I am to her example and her life. She was incredibly brave. She grew up in the worst poverty in Poland between the wars, and spent time enslaved. And yet she had this incredible courage and hope for the future, and was willing to leave everything behind and come to a new country, not knowing the language, not knowing the customs, and make a new life. In that song earlier about we are our ancestors' dream, I think that really struck me about how everything that all the generations before us, especially the mothers, in the way that they have loved and nurtured the best of us, we are who they dreamed of. And what a wonderful responsibility and inspiration for us. My mother was very religious. We went to the Catholic school, and I did experience firsthand the charity of the nuns. But they also gave us really good education. I can go in any place and sign my name, and they'll say, "Oh, you went to a Catholic school." The nuns made sure we had our writing. But my mom was very dedicated to the four of us sisters. I was born in Germany at a refugee camp, and but my sisters were born here. And she was always eager to learn. She kept telling me I could do anything, and that's something, that education was something no one could take from me. She had lost everything in her life, and she said, that's something you carry. Who you are is more important than what you have or what you can accumulate, because that determines your character, and that determines who you will be and how you will interact with the world. So she gave me that, and the love of Mother Mary. She has quite a devotion to Mother Mary over the years in the Catholic Church, and I think that's something that carried us through the rough times. Is the mother's love. She was so dedicated. We went to church every day of the school year, and on the Sundays, of course, and it gave me a grounding and a remembrance of the divine connection, even though at the time we were told, we're just sinners. But that's why I value this community so much. It's because we have turned that corner and know that really we are the divine children of the Mother, Father, God. And I believe it came from that grounding that I got in the love and the devotion that I got from my mother. She would sacrifice everything for all of us. And my dad was an old-fashioned kind of guy, very strict and military, but she did make a break one time and took us all to Niagara Falls. We lived in Michigan, and she and her friend they packed at least 7 of us in the station wagon, and that was her declaration of independence. And so I have that as an example of her bravery, her courage, her devotion, and most of all, her love.
Okay.
Having my back to somebody.
Okay.
My name is Clancy, and that was not on my birth certificate. My birth certificate said I was Patricia Sue Clancy. So growing up, I was Patty, and occasionally it was Patricia. And then later on, it was Pat. And if you look at my physique, you could sort of know what my mother looked like, because except for the big ears, which were Clancy's, we walked similarly. It was just like, that was just the way it was. And it was great growing up, because when I became a teenager, my clothes fit her and her clothes fit me, and she worked at an office, and so we could trade off and nobody was the wiser. So I had a much more extensive wardrobe than I ever would have had, because we were just a middle-class family. Her example of her compassionate side was she married my dad when they fell in love in high school, and she got married at 17, and he was older because he had quit school and then come back. So he was the handsome older guy. So when they got married, her mother said, you wait till you're 20 before you have a baby. I'll pay for the doctor's bill. Now that's during the Depression. That was, a big thing. So her birthday's, my birthday is December 15th. Hers is December 7th. She came of age just before my birthday. So that's what you call family planning and economics. I never heard her say, you can't do that. If I wanted to do something that was kind of off the beaten path, and she'd listen. And as long as she didn't think it was going to kill me or make me injured or do something, it was okay. Okay. And the kind of support, I have to include what ultimately, they realized they had married too young and they separated, and then we were just separated for a while and then divorced. And then my mother remarried. And so I had a bonus dad who was just lovely. Now, how could I have been so blessed, have this lovely mother and two gentlemen that just were always there for me? My dad moved to California and I was in Michigan, but I always knew he was completely supportive of me. And later I understood how he didn't have a lot of money. He was a laborer, but he consistently sent a small check to my mom. So I think, my goodness, it's not just Mother's Day, but it's mothers and mothering my grandmother, and because I had activity with my both grandmothers, that was lovely. And I even knew my great grandmother, and that's pretty awesome. We weren't close because we didn't live that close, but we get, families would get together. So I'm just celebrating it, all of the various ways that mothers show up. And the teacher that in my school that taught my mother, my dad, and one day passing from one class to another, I felt this tap on my shoulder and I glanced and she was right beside me and she whispered in my ear, your mother and dad really loved each other. Later, I thought, what prompted that? She saw something that must have been that was going on with me, some little thing. But I thought, parenting appears in many ways. How blessed we are. Thanks for the chance to share.
No. Okay, still hear me. We have many different memories of our mothers, even if our mothers were our fathers. We have different experiences, but they help to make us who we are. And it's been great to be able to share a little bit about our remembrances of our mothers. Why don't we take some time out now for a meditation? Okay. Let's just be comfortable. Breathe deeply. Take in that breath and release it. Creator Spirit, you are our mother and our father. For you are all. We are grateful for those who have mothered us along our way. Not all mothers are the warm, loving type, but that's okay because what the others offer is also valuable, even if we didn't think so along the way. We give thanks for those who have mothered us. And we give thanks for the opportunities that we have had to pass along that love to others. Because that's what it is. It is all love. Even the disciplining, that was love. And we give you thanks. Thanks that we have experienced that so that we can become better people. Breathe in all of that love from the past, which is not something that happened long ago, but is now because we are remembering it now. We breathe in that love that we have experienced. And that love becomes a part of us that we share with everyone we know. For we all are love.